Welcome to my channel. Get ready for a spine-chilling tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Today, we're diving into a terrifying story set in an unexpected place, a KFC franchise with a dark, sinister secret. So, grab your popcorn, turn down the lights, and let's get into this horrifying adventure. In the small town of Brookhaven, nestled between dense forests and shadowed hills, stood a KFC franchise known for its crispy, golden chicken. Its owner, Harold Finch, prided himself on the secret recipe that had brought his establishment fame. Yet, as the sun set and the town's lights flickered, a chilling story unfolded, one that would haunt Brookhaven and the KFC franchise forever. The day was sweltering, and the smell of fried chicken wafted through Brookhaven like a beacon. The local residents lined up eagerly, their mouths watering as they anticipated the familiar, savory taste of Harold Finch's fried chicken. Harold was an old man with a kind smile, always willing to chat with his customers and share his passion for cooking. But beneath his genial exterior, there was a secret he had guarded for years, a secret that began with the arrival of a mysterious package. It arrived on an otherwise uneventful Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier with a stern face and a cryptic message for the perfect recipe. Inside was an ancient, leather-bound book adorned with symbols Harold didn't recognize. The book's pages were yellowed with age, and its cover was embossed with an insignia that seemed to shimmer ominously. Harold's curiosity piqued. He decided to read it in the privacy of his office after closing time. That evening, as the last customer departed and the restaurant fell into a quiet lull, Harold retreated to his office. The air was thick with tension, and the flickering light cast eerie shadows on the walls. As he opened the book, the room grew colder, and an unsettling chill crept up his spine. The recipes inside were far different from the ones he had grown accustomed to. They spoke of ingredients that were not found in any kitchen, essences, whispers of dark magic, and rituals. Harold's hands trembled slightly as he turned the pages, each one more cryptic and disturbing than the last. The first recipe that caught his eye was a marinade, an intricate process involving strange herbs and an odd ritual. The instructions were specific. The herbs needed to be gathered at twilight, and the ritual was to be performed in complete silence, with only the faintest light to guide the way. Despite his apprehension, Harold couldn't resist the temptation to try it. He had always prided himself on his cooking, and the promise of an even better recipe was too alluring to pass up. He set to work, carefully measuring out the ingredients, some of which he had never heard of before. The mixture bubbled ominously, emitting a faint, discordant melody that seemed to resonate with a malevolent force. As he applied the marinade to the chicken, an inexplicable sense of dread settled in his chest. He could almost feel the room darken around him as if the shadows were growing longer, creeping closer. The night passed in restless sleep, with Harold waking intermittently to strange sounds and fleeting shadows at the edge of his vision. It was as if the darkness itself was watching him, waiting. The next day, the fried chicken tasted extraordinary. It was unlike anything anyone had ever had, crispier, more flavorful, and addictive. Customers raved about it, and Harold's restaurant was more popular than ever. Yet, there was something unsettling in the way people spoke of the chicken, their eyes glazed and their voices slightly strained. As the days went by, Harold noticed disturbing changes. The once cheerful employees began acting strangely. They would speak in hushed tones, and their eyes seemed haunted. At times, Harold caught them staring blankly at the walls, their faces pale and their expressions vacant. When asked what was wrong, they would simply smile, a smile that never reached their eyes, and say they were fine. Customers, too, seemed different. They would devour the chicken with an almost frenzied hunger, leaving behind a telltale gleam in their eyes. Some began to visit the restaurant more frequently, sometimes twice or 3 times a day, as if they couldn't get enough. Harold noticed that they were eating more than usual, their hands trembling slightly as they reached for another piece. One evening, Harold found a customer who had stayed behind, slumped over a table, his eyes wide and unseeing. When Harold approached, the man's skin was cold to the touch, his body rigid as if in a deep trance. Suddenly, the customer jerked awake, his eyes wild with fear. He muttered incoherently about the whispers and the price before stumbling out of the restaurant, leaving Harold with a deep sense of unease. Harold was horrified but could not stop the spread of the dark influence. More and more customers began to exhibit strange behaviors. Some claimed to hear voices whispering their names, while others spoke of nightmarish visions that haunted their sleep. The once vibrant atmosphere of the restaurant had turned oppressive, the air thick with an unseen tension. As the restaurant continued to thrive, so did the malevolent presence. Strange occurrences began to plague the establishment. The deep fryer would switch on by itself, the oil bubbling furiously without any chicken inside. The kitchen lights flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows that seemed to move of their own accord. Occasionally, Harold would hear whispering voices that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. His dreams were plagued by nightmarish visions of shadowy figures and grotesque scenes of torment. One night, during a particularly intense thunderstorm, Harold was alone in the restaurant. The power went out, plunging the place into darkness. The eerie silence was broken only by the sound of the rain battering the windows. As Harold fumbled for a flashlight, he heard a scuttling noise behind him. Turning around, he saw nothing but shadows and debris, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. The scuttling noise grew louder, closer, echoing through the empty dining area. Harold's pulse quickened as he aimed the flashlight in the direction of the sound, but the beam only cut through thick darkness. The tension in the air was suffocating, and the oppressive silence returned, broken only by the relentless rain. Suddenly, a guttural, inhuman growl resonated through the restaurant, freezing Harold in place. His flashlight flickered, and for a moment, he saw a horrifying figure, a twisted, shadowy entity with eyes glowing like coals. The figure seemed to flicker in and out of existence, its form unstable as if it were struggling to maintain its presence in the physical world. It lunged at him with a speed that defied logic, but as the light stabilized, it vanished, leaving only a lingering sense of terror in its wake. Harold was left standing alone in the darkened restaurant, his heart pounding in his chest. The encounter had shaken him to his core, but it also left him with a growing realization. Whatever force he had unleashed was growing stronger, and it was only a matter of time before it consumed everything. Harold's once thriving restaurant had become a place of fear. The customers who continued to frequent the establishment seemed less like people and more like hollow shells, their eyes vacant, their expressions vacant. The town of Brookhaven itself began to change. People whispered about strange occurrences, about the eerie glow that sometimes emanated from the restaurant late at night, about the odd behavior of those who ate there. Harold's own health began to deteriorate. He couldn't sleep, plagued by nightmares of the shadowy figure and the terrible things it had shown him. His skin grew pale, his eyes sunken. He knew he had to do something, but the thought of confronting the entity terrified him. Desperation drove Harold to seek help. He reached out to an old friend, Sarah, who had once been a historian with an interest in the occult. Sarah was skeptical at first, but when she saw the book and heard Harold's story, her skepticism turned to concern. Upon examining the book and the restaurant, she confirmed Harold's worst fears. The book was a grimoire, a tome of dark magic that had bound itself to the recipe. Sarah explained that the recipe was a conduit for a malevolent spirit, a vengeful entity that fed on the souls of those who consumed the tainted chicken. It was clear that the only way to break the curse was to destroy the book and sever its connection to the entity. Armed with this knowledge, Harold and Sarah devised a plan. They gathered the remaining pages of the book and performed a ritual to banish the spirit. As they chanted the incantations, the restaurant shook violently, and a chilling wind swept through the room. The air grew thick with an oppressive darkness, and the spirit manifested, writhing in anger. The entity's form was more solid now, more real. It towered over them, its eyes blazing with rage. It shrieked in a language that neither Harold nor Sarah could understand, but the meaning was clear. It would not go quietly. The ritual was intense, but Sarah's expertise and Harold's determination prevailed. As the final words were spoken, the book was consumed by flames, and the spirit let out a deafening scream before vanishing into the void. The restaurant fell silent once more, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. Harold collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. It was over. The aftermath left Brookhaven's KFC forever changed. The restaurant reopened, but the once perfect recipe was never used again. Harold Finch retired shortly after, leaving the town to slowly recover from the haunting experience. The restaurant's dark history became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of meddling with forces beyond comprehension. Years later, as new faces took over the KFC, the story faded into legend. The restaurant's popularity waned, and it became just another fast food joint in a small town. But on stormy nights, when the winds howled through Brookhaven, old-timers would whisper about the time when a seemingly innocent recipe turned into a nightmare. They would speak of the strange things that still happened at the old KFC, the flickering lights, the cold spots, the occasional glimpse of something dark lurking in the corners. And somewhere, hidden among the shadows, the echoes of that dark recipe lingered, waiting for the next curious soul to uncover its chilling secret. For the dark entity was not truly gone, it was merely biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to return and claim its due. The end was not the end. It was merely a pause, a brief respite before the darkness stirred once more. And in that silence, the whispers began again.